Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Teletown Hall with Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana's 4th Congressional District. Later in the call, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please press star 3 at any time during this call. And for now, we will kick it off with Congressman Mike Johnson.
Well, thank you, Ruth, and thanks to everyone who's on the call. I also have a special guest with me that I'll introduce in a few moments, a colleague of mine from Congress who's one of the experts on the health aspects of what we're facing with the pandemic because he's a physician and has worked on the front lines of all that. But we want to welcome you to the call. I know these are extraordinary times and extraordinary circumstances, and we wanted to reach out because we're not allowed and not able to have an in-person town hall as we like to do so often. We thought the next best thing would be to have a couple of these telephone town halls. So we appreciate you participating. There will be an opportunity for you to weigh in and ask questions in a few moments. And the way to do that when we come to that point in the call will be all you do is you press star 3 if you'd like to ask a question, and we'll get you in the queue. And everything is open for discussion. Let me give you a quick update on where we are on the CARES Act and where Congress is at the moment and all of that. First, let me wish everybody hope you're having a blessed Holy Week at home. We've, of course, just observed Passover, our Jewish friends, and for Christians, we're anticipating Easter. Unusual circumstances as they are, this has been a great time for a lot of people to be with family, and of course, it's hard to be in a celebratory mood sometimes these days because we know that so many people around us really are truly suffering as a result of this coronavirus pandemic. It's an unprecedented event, and it has called for unprecedented action on behalf of the U.S. Congress. And so you've seen that. Everybody knows by now that we passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. We call it for short the CARES Act. And it has some very important features that I know everyone that's on this call is interested in. The first of that, give you a quick overview of it, is the Income for American Families component of that $2.2 trillion package that Congress passed. As you know, you'll get a one-time rebate check. This will affect most or a lot of people in our district. The amount is $1,200 per individual, $2,400 per couple, and $500 per eligible child. It's not reduced for lower income Americans. That's good news. It is reduced gradually for higher income earners. So if you earn $75,000 or more as an individual annually, you'll get a graduated scale. You get a little bit less the higher you earn. It's $150,000 for married couples, and then the rebate check phases out completely at $99,000 for individuals annual salary, $198,000 for married couples. But that's going to be a big help for a lot of people. Anticipate one of your questions may be, when will you see that? The Treasury Secretary, Secretary Mnuchin, who you've seen on the news a lot recently and at these briefings, has assured us that most Americans will see that in their checking accounts by April 17th. That's the deadline, the date that he set. And the reason they can do that so quickly is because if they have your direct deposit information on file at the Internal Revenue Service, if you filed a tax return in 2018 or 2019, they have your direct deposit info, they'll do that automatically. So you'll just see that amount show up in your checking account here in the next couple of weeks. If they don't have your direct deposit information on file, you'll get a paper check, and that may be a little bit later in April, but at least that relief is on the way. So that's a big component of the CARES Act. The second big part that's gotten so much attention is the small business assistance component of the CARES Act. And that's what you've heard a lot about. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, is backing these loans. It's a loan program that's designed to help small businesses pay for their expenses while we endure this sort of valley that we're walking through together as a nation. This unprecedented event that the government took was out of necessity. President Trump, I think, rightfully said about a week ago or so at one of his briefings, he said, we're in a war. And we're in a war against an unseen and unforeseen enemy, and that's this virus. And so in response, the government, out of due caution for everyone's safety and survival, they effectively shut down the U.S. economy, this unprecedented step. Nothing like this has ever really happened before. And because the government did that, the government has, many of us believe, a responsibility to help sustain the American public during that period because the government made that decision. And so that's the rationale behind the CARES Act. The idea being that if the economy is going to be shut down, the one thing we have to ensure as best we can is to keep employees and employers connected to one another. We wanted to avoid the nightmare scenario where all the small businesses in the country just shut their doors and have to fire all their employees and or close for good, because then when this is over on the other side of the pandemic, it would be next to impossible to resurrect the U.S. economy because there wouldn't be businesses and jobs to go back to. And so we wanted to try to keep that connection as best we could. So the CARES Act and what has come from that, we call it the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. You've probably heard the acronym so many times the last few days. That is the program that is designed to try to accomplish that goal, to keep people connected to their employer so that we can bridge this gap, reopen the economy, and get everybody back to work, hopefully, prayerfully, as soon as possible. So what this is a low-interest loan. Actually will convert to a grant if small business owners use it appropriately. And if you are a small business owner, or you are you have one in your family, or you close friends, associates, many are already working on this or have worked on it. They filed an application through their local bankers, their community bank or lenders, credit union, and many of them have been approved already, and some of that money is flowing. And we can get into the details of what that program provides if people have specific questions here in just a few moments. But that is happening. It's been a tremendous success so far. And because it's so successful, Congress put $349 billion towards that effort, that appropriation to help those businesses. Many expect that it may run out pretty quickly because there's such a high demand. And so there's discussion on Capitol Hill right now about adding additional hundreds of billions of dollars to that fund to make sure that all small businesses, and by the way, churches and nonprofits and others, sole practitioners and sole proprietors and independent contractors, even gig workers like musicians who play in restaurants and bars, that kind of thing. Everybody has an equal access to that, and we want to make sure there's enough money there for those who need it to be able to obtain that. And so that's a discussion. There was a little dust up today in the politics side of it where the Republicans and Democrats are not agreeing on how to get that through, but we still have some hope that it will happen. So everybody will keep their fingers crossed on that. Real quick specifics about Louisiana, and then I'm going to turn it over to my special guest, and we'll take questions. And remember, if you want to get in the lineup to ask a question of us, you can press *3 on your phone and get in line to ask a question. We'd be glad to answer those. Just a quick bit about Louisiana and where we are, and I'll turn it over to my guest. We are particularly devastated here in this state. Sadly and unfortunately, everyone knows that next to the state of New York, we have the worst incidences of this virus spreading. There may be a lot of reasons for that. One of them, I think, clearly is the Mardi Gras celebration that was just so ill-timed right before the virus broke out down in New Orleans. And everybody in Louisiana knows that's a huge event where lots of people are jammed together in close proximity. And it may have been in hindsight the perfect storm. So that's probably one of the factors that contributes to it. But it's spread here faster than any other place on the planet. Incredibly, that's been the true statistic. And so in addition to that, we've taken a 1-2 punch because while the pandemic has been wreaking all that havoc and really harming a lot of Louisianians, by the way, more than 17,000 cases confirmed so far and 652 deaths as of this afternoon. Tragically, at the same time, the oil and gas industry has been taking it on the chin because, as you've seen, the provocative actions of Russia and Saudi Arabia have really put a glut in the market, and the prices of oil have dropped through the cellar, and all of that is devastating for a state's economy that relies so heavily on that industry. So there's some efforts in play right now that we're trying to work to fix that. But the combination of those two factors and some other things have made Louisiana really suffer. Our unemployment is very high. We have 10% unemployment nationally. In Louisiana, many of us feel our gut instinct is it's going to be higher, and it may be sustained that way for a while. It's only by God's grace, frankly, we're going to get through this, but we need steady leadership, and we need the involvement of all citizens and everybody pulling together. One thing we know about Louisiana, we're a very resilient people, and we overcome challenges and natural disasters all the time. It's secondhand to us. And we're going to get through this, and so I'm very optimistic about the future, but realistic enough to know that we're going to have a tough road to hoe here, at least in the short term. So, with that, I want to introduce our special guest because he's so generous in being on the call with us and giving up his time. This is one of my closest friends in Congress. We're classmates. We came in together right as the time that President Trump was taking office a few years back, and 115th Congress. And Dr. Roger Marshall, Congressman Marshall, is from the great state of Kansas. In fact, he represents the big 1st Congressional District, which is the largest agriculture producing district in the whole country. He was elected, as I was, in late 2016, and he serves on the House Agriculture and the Science, Space, and Technology Committees. And before being elected to Congress, Dr. Marshall served as an OBGYN in rural Kansas and delivered lots of babies and has an exceptional bedside manner, and that served him well in politics as well. And he's one of our star members in the largest caucus in Congress, the Republican Study Committee, which I happen to chair. He has been the leader of our healthcare task force there, working on improving our nation's healthcare system, and he's very active and involved as a leader of the Doctors Caucus in Congress as well, and just is a very, very busy guy, one of the people who's most high in demand in the country right now because of his expertise, and he's generous enough to spend some time with us on the phone. And so I asked him if he would join in here and just give us an overview, remarks on the coronavirus and kind of the health aspects of this. And then again, after that, we'll turn it over to questions if folks on the phone have those. Again, to get in the line for that, press *3, and you can get in the queue. So without further ado, Congressman Roger Marshall, MD, out of Kansas. Roger, thanks so much for being with us.
Mike, he's risen.
That's right, brother. Amen.
He's risen indeed. And I just tell you, I'm just so honored to be on the call with you and appreciate your friendship and your leadership. And the folks of Louisiana are just so blessed to have such a great congressman and really your whole delegation. It's just an honor to work with you all. And, you know, I just want to bring a message of hope today. As a physician, I've been out in private practice for 25 years, and I've been following this study really closely. I oversaw 3 county health departments, so I do the epidemiology a little bit more than some doctors do. And I just want to tell the folks of Louisiana, first of all, I agree with you. You've lost hundreds of people, and I regret that. But there's good news on the way. What I'm seeing happening across the country is maybe things aren't quite as dire shape as the national media would say. And in fact, the projections coming out this week for the entire country, probably half as bad as they said it was going to be. You guys got a tough week ahead of you. We've got a fairly tough week ahead of us, but we're almost there. So we're almost there, and I know that the national media wants to scare you and say there's not enough hospital beds, there are not enough ICU beds, there's not enough ventilators, but I'm here to tell you that you're going to be okay in Louisiana, and we're okay in Kansas as well. I'm seeing doctors and nurses do extraordinary things across the country, things like taking one ventilator and putting 2 or 4 patients on it if they have to do that. But thanks to be honest, I think this hydroxychloroquine that the president sure touts is a good drug. It's working well. It's decreasing the number of people that need to go on that type of thing. So I think you all are about to turn the corner. And once we get that behind us, it's going to take a month to get it all the way behind us. But I can't wait for the day when Louisiana is selling oil. And guess what? Kansas sells a little bit of oil. Nothing like you guys do, but it's important for our economy as well. So, I just want to spread optimism here. I know your doctors and nurses. We have the best healthcare system in the world. And we're going to get through this together. And maybe I'll just stop there, Mike, and happy to take any questions. And again, just a happy Easter to Kelly and you and your 4 wonderful children.
Thank you, my friend, and to your beautiful family as well. And again, thanks for giving us time. And I'm grateful you can stay on the phone for a couple of minutes because I expect that some of the questions we may have in the queue are probably healthcare related. And I'm delighted to defer to an expert on some of that.
All right.
You're right, Roger, for that perspective. And I'm so glad you said that because this morning we awoke to the news where they're talking about the latest models are projecting far fewer deaths in the U.S. than we had originally feared. And I think the number they're floating around today is about 60,000 as an estimate. Isn't that about right?
You got it. That's absolutely right. It wasn't too long ago they were saying 1 million, and then it was 100,000, and today it's 63,000. And the best thing we can do for your economy and my economy is get through this crisis health-wise as quickly and as healthy as we can. The sooner we can get people healthy and get this behind it, the sooner we can start drilling more oil, the sooner I can start moving beef out of Kansas.
That's it. Well, yeah, we need those restaurants to open up again so we can move that beef. I hear you. We're a big ag district here as well, and our farmers have really taken it on the chin through all this as well. And we had a members call earlier this morning. Roger and I were both on with House members, and we had the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, on, and we had the administrator of the Small Business Administration, the SBA, who's in charge of all these loans, Ms. Carranza. Jovita Carranza on the phone, and they were so generous with their time, answered all of our questions, and we brought directly to them, Roger and I both, and all of our colleagues, brought to them many of the questions and concerns that have come straight from our constituents and our bankers, our farmers, and it was just really helpful. And I'll say this, and then we'll turn it over to questions again, *3 if you want to ask a question on your phone. Hats off to the administration. I mean, there are lots of armchair quarterbacks after an event like this. It's so unprecedented and unforeseeable. But I will say, from my perspective, and I'm sure Roger agrees, that the Trump administration from top to bottom have just been exceptional. They really have. They jumped on this. They've addressed it and handled it as best as could be imagined under the circumstances. And we have been very grateful. And I want you to know, as your representative in Congress, they have been immediately responsive to us and our needs, to our people in the 4th District here in Louisiana. Because when I have a issue that pops up or an urgent need or something, I take it right up the chain, and I mean, within an hour or two, it's addressed by the White House, by the president himself, and that's been a tremendous blessing. And it's not just me, because he's doing that, I know, for Roger in Kansas and all of our colleagues around the country, because they're in it with us. The president, the vice president, everybody involved, they have their sleeves rolled up daily. They're corresponding with us daily. They're taking these concerns and addressing them, and that's been, a blessing through this whole ordeal. So. Let me not belabor this anymore and go to questions. Ruth, are you going to coordinate that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and move it to the first question. We've got Miss Diane from Doylean, Louisiana. You're on the line now with Congressman Johnson and Congressman Marshall. Go ahead and ask your question.
I was wondering about people with Social Security that don't make enough to file taxes every year. Will they be getting a check too? If they have
yes, ma'am.
If they have,
yes, ma'am. They will. You're included. And if you haven't filed a tax return in the last few years, what they've suggested to us is, and you can do this online at irs.gov, is to file a simplified, streamlined form. And if you go to that website for the IRS, they'll have a quick link there that will just take you right to it, because that's obviously a major question that a lot of people have. But if you have a Social Security number and you are in the federal government system, you are going to be receiving a check one way or the other, either direct deposit or in your it'll come to you by mail. So you want to check on that. And if you have any concerns or questions with it or any problems, don't hesitate to call our office. And this gives me a good opportunity. Let me just give that number, and I'll give it again later. But if you have a pen, anybody can write this down, or you can look it up online. It's easy. But you can go to our website anytime. It's mikejohnson.house.gov, and all the information's there. Frequently asked questions, answers to those about all this stuff. And our office number, the one in Bossier City, is kind of our main office number for the district, is 318-840-0309. 840-0309. And if you have an individual challenge or problem with any of this, we'll put a staffer on it to kind of help you, walk you through it, and be glad to do that. Okay, Ruth, next one.
Yeah, we're going to move to the next question. I've got Mr. Ken from Jonesboro asking a question about churches and the PPP plan. Go ahead, Mr. Ken.
Oh, good afternoon, Congressman Johnson.
Good afternoon.
My question is, we're currently not paying our pastor and our musician because we haven't been able to have church service due to the COVID issue.
Yes, sir.
In order to qualify for that paycheck protection program, do we or will we have already had to have filed them as a 1099 employee in prior years?
Well, it depends. The churches are eligible, nonprofits, including churches, are eligible, and you can go to your local banker. I probably talked to 2,000 pastors on conference calls in the last 4 days, kind of walking them through this process. 1099 employees are eligible for relief under the Paycheck Protection Program, but to answer that specific question is, if you're paying independent contractors or a 1099 employee through the church, and that's part of the regular payroll, then yes, that would qualify, and the church could do that and use it as part of its regular payroll expenses. If some pastors have their own separate 501c3, kind of like an evangelism ministry or something like that, and this is particularly true in smaller and rural churches. They may serve at several churches, and they're paid through their own nonprofit. And so if that's the scenario, then what they would do is file separately, individually that way, either as a sole proprietor or as their own 501c3 organization, or as an independent contractor. So the only thing that the government's worried about, they don't want somebody to double dip, right? So when you call your local banker, community banker, whomever is going to handle that for you, they can walk you through the specifics of your individual situation, and they'll advise you which way to go. But the short answer is you should apply, and it's going to be a great blessing, because as I mentioned, particularly a lot of these smaller churches and large churches too. 30 minutes ago, I was on the phone with one of the largest churches in a 250-mile radius of Shreveport Bossier, and they have 50 employees on staff, and that's a big, when nobody's been to church for 4 months, obviously tithes and offerings go down, and it makes it very difficult to maintain their operation. And so in a smaller church, sometimes it's even more delicate. They have very little margin to get over a hump like this. So it converts, the loan converts to a grant, and it is a gift from the federal government to help you tide that over. And from my perspective, one of the most important things we can have on the other side of this pandemic is an active and vibrant church, because this could be the church's finest moment. I think it will be, to help people heal in every way. And so long answer to a very good question. Short answer is yes, and the more detailed answer is your lender will help you walk through specifics. And if you need more beyond that, call us offline, and I'll be happy to help you.
Great. Well, next question is from Duran from Louisiana, and they have a question on physical therapy and telehealth. Go ahead, Duran.
Hey, Congressman, how are you?
Great.
Great. I was wanting to know if you could get some word into CMS to go ahead and allow physical therapy to be reimbursed for telehealth. I know they recently came out and opened the codes up that we use, but in their infinite wisdom, they referred it back to a specific section of the previous law, and physical therapy wasn't listed as someone who could do telehealth. So even though they've okayed the use of our codes, we're still not designated as providers. So
Roger,
obviously in this predicament,
yeah.
Well, in this predicament, in my case, I'm an outpatient clinic in Bossier, and we've lost 75% of our patients due to different reasons, and so we're doing telehealth. And other private companies have waived their rules and are allowing us to do telemedicine, and Medicare is still lagging behind. So that's my first question. And then also CMS is going to cut our reimbursement by 8% in 2021 for physical therapy. So obviously that's something that we feel is not necessary. We're a very integral part of everyone's care, and a cut in pay or reimbursement isn't necessarily the right way to progress our profession and everything that we contribute to daily life.
Well, I agree with you there, and I'm keenly aware of both of those issues. Dr. Marshall, you have insight you want to share on either one of those?
Well, the good news is that telemedicine may be more advanced in the next 2 months than we've been through the last year or two. So I think it's a great step forward. And I know for your rural communities like mine, that's going to be a great thing going forward as well. Unfortunately, physical therapy was left out on it. The Doc Caucus, we met with Seema Burma today. That did not come up, but we'll be sure and try to get that in front of her here in the next week and see what we can do to push that along as well.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. And I do agree that cutting those reimbursement rates is just it's terrible timing, among other things. But we did include, as Roger's indicated, in the CARES Act, there was an effort to facilitate the use of new and innovative telemedicine technology because it was recognized that, that's one of the key components to preventing containing the spread of COVID-19. If you can keep people at home and they don't have to come into the clinic themselves, obviously that helps with that effort. But if there's any silver lining, this event has drawn a lot of new attention to the benefits of telemedicine, and I think that'll serve us well in the days and years ahead. So let's keep our fingers crossed. But look, keenly aware of your issue. I got a lot of physical therapist friends, and y'all got a very strong group of allies on the Hill as well, and we'll keep working on it. So thank you for that question.
Great. We're going to move
ahead.
to the next one. Miss Mary Agnes from Eunice has a question about stimulus checks. Go ahead, Miss Mary. Miss Mary?
You might be on
Yes,
mute.
my
Yeah, go
my
ahead.
question was in regards to having not filed direct taxes, and okay, I had not filed my taxes directly in 2018 and 19, but I had filed extensions, and I guess my purpose for asking the question was, I know that I'm not going to get a direct deposit check, but how were they going to find me as far as getting a paper check to me?
Yes, ma'am. Well, if you've had the same address for several years, they should have that. And even if you filed an extension, they'll still have that record of that filing. But just to be sure, you may want to take advantage of that. The recommendation they made about filing what they call quick return or an abbreviated return, basically, and it's just kind of a placeholder document that you can file online at irs.gov, and just to make sure they have your updated and current address, and you could even enter in your checking account information and stuff. That's what they've told us. They have that available now. So if folks are concerned they haven't filed 2018 or 2019 taxes yet, they can do that simply for the purpose of making sure you're on the front line of the issuance of these checks. So I think, I haven't checked it since they told us that a couple of days ago, but I think if you go to irs.gov, it's probably right there on the first page where you can click on that and file one of those simple. Basically, you're just registering your address and your current address and name and all that information to attach it to your Social Security number, and that way they have you on their current and updated file.
Great. We'll move to the next caller. We've got John Glover on the phone from Shreveport with a question about, again, Social Security and the stimulus checks.
Hello?
Go ahead, Ms. Glover. Go ahead.
Yes. Just wanted to ask, and I did understand the lady that you just spoke with, wanted to make sure that those of us who were getting Social Security, that we would indeed be a recipient of the stimulus package as well. And if so, would it go direct deposit or would it be in a paper check since we're already in the system?
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question, and we've had that over and over. And so the answer is yes. And what they told us is this. I'm reading it right out of their frequently asked questions document. It says anyone with a current valid Social Security number will receive a check, as long as you're in the country legally. Not illegal immigrants. It's accepted for that. But everyone else will get it, and that's the only question. You're asking the right question. Will it be a direct deposit or will it come to you in the mail? And they told us that if you filed any tax document with the IRS in 2018 or 2019, then they will have all your information, and they very likely have your direct deposit info. Now, if you've never turned in your checking account information to the IRS for that purpose, you'll get one in the mail. But again, I would encourage you, if you want to file one of those simple tax returns to receive an economic impact payment, the quicker way as a direct deposit, you still have time to do that. and they made that live on their IRS website on March 30th. So you can try to go that route if you want to, just even this afternoon. And I think you'll be in time to be able to be on the direct deposit list.
Great. We're going to move to the next question. We've got Suzanne out of Keithville on the line with a question about hospitals and protective equipment. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Thank you. I would like to thank both of you for all the work that y'all are doing, and we really appreciate it. And
thank you.
I have a daughter that's an RN on the front line, and they're having trouble finding masks, those N95 masks. And I know that they're supposed to be coming, but this is something they desperately need.
Yes, ma'am. We are. Go ahead, Rod. You want to address that generally, and I'll tell you locally what's going on. Go ahead.
No, number one is just thanks to all the doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists, all those people on the front line. They're doing an amazing job. They're putting themselves at risk and their families at risk, and they're figuring out more and more ways to be more efficient with those. But it's been a problem throughout the country. I think the good news is the problem's getting better every day. For instance, California is saying we don't even need all these ventilators. Let's send those to Colorado. I know the president, the vice president, FEMA are trying to get the national stockpiles moved to the right places, and Louisiana absolutely a priority. And each state's a little bit differently, but I'm sure Chairman Johnson's got a few more comments what's happening there locally on the ground.
Well, yeah, what you said is exactly right, Roger. And Louisiana has been high on the radar for the national stockpile. And as they're strategically moving those assets and the equipment around the country, we've been at the top of the list all the time, unfortunately, because of our status with the high incidence we have in the state and the rapid spread. That said, we've still had pockets and areas of the state that have not had what they needed on time. And I've been working around the clock, I know Roger has as well, trying to connect these facilities with suppliers, and there's a lot of this work going on behind the scenes. But there's been some confusion at different points, and some of the suppliers were overseas. And for example, I'll give you a quick story. We had 300,000 N95 masks ordered for the Shreveport-Bossier area through Willis Knighton from a supplier in Argentina that I actually connected them with, and through a friend of a friend, physicians that we know and trust. And anyway, long story short, they made the order. They put the first $100,000 on a $300,000 investment to purchase these. And then the nation of Argentina shut down its exports because they started to have the pandemic spread there, and they wanted to preserve all the equipment they had. And so they had to refund the sale, and it just turned into a mess. And so that's the kind of thing we've seen. It's a worldwide event, and that's what added to the chaos. And so a lot of the suppliers for these materials and N95 masks and et cetera are overseas and have been. And so that's been part of the challenge. But as Roger said, by God's grace, we're getting through it. The governor told me 2.5 hours ago, I was on the phone with Governor Edwards, and he said it appears to be good news. As Roger was indicating earlier, we seem to be on the other side of this. We are cautiously optimistic in Louisiana. This is going to become a much better situation, particularly for our healthcare workers here in the very near future, because they're doing this heroic work and they need all the break they can get. But he said that as of this morning, we are not now projected to run out of hospital beds, and we should have a sufficient number of ventilators that we need, which is all new and encouraging news. And he said that the supply chain is now filling up and filling in again. So there'll still be some pockets we have to worry about, but hopefully this is all going to get really a whole lot better in the next day or two. So we'll keep praying for those that are on the front lines, and thank you for your daughter and her heroic work, because they really are the heroes in this whole thing.
Great. We'll move to the next question. We've got Marty with Bossier. Coming out of Bossier City, and they have a question about SBA loans. Go ahead, Marty.
Congressman, the first thing I would like to say is how much I respect and thankful for what you guys do, and especially the president, the way that you are handling this pandemic that, nobody could ever forecast or think that it's coming. But that's the first thing I would like to say. I appreciate how much and how hard you guys are working. my question is kind of twofold. The first one is the SBA loans. I own a party and event business here in Shreveport Bossier, and we have been 100% shut down since really since it broke. I've applied for the SBA and the PPP, which the PPP is going to come through. It's not that's a great program to keep our employees going, but the SBA, the turnaround time on those loans. Do you have any idea how long that's going to be? I did get an email confirming that they had everything they needed. So I was just wondering if you had an idea of how long it was going to take for that to actually turn into dollars. And the second thing is when this is over and they start loosening up restrictions, do you think that it will be, I guess the best way to put it is maybe rolling out in certain not terms, but sections, like me being in the party and event. I'm really just wondering how long do you think it would be before we could go back to business once that this is reached the level to where they think we can kind of start doing things again?
Thank you. Those are great questions. The first one is a really important one. As you can imagine, we've been asked that a whole lot over the last couple of days, how soon those payments will actually be received, because we have hundreds of approvals now on these SBA loans. I'll just tell you that we were on a call just a couple hours ago this morning with the SBA administrator, Carranza, and she said, she's the top of the chain. She works with Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin, and she said that they are keenly aware of the urgent need. The president has been very aggressive, telling them to get that money flowing and get it in the hands. And the only thing that's held them up so far, as she explained to us, is that they're trying to be very careful to make sure everything is well documented, because you can imagine how much fraud would be opened up, the potential for fraud in a program that's implemented this quickly. And so they're trying to find that perfect balance to make sure they have enough documentation to justify before they hit send and that money, is transferred to that account. But they are literally working around the clock, and they're doing heroic work like our healthcare workers. We've asked them to do almost an impossible thing. The SBA, just so you know, in a normal year, they process about something like 60,000 small business loans nationwide, and they're working right now on about 3.5 million of those loan applications as we speak. So it's incredible Herculean effort, but they assure us that money's coming and it will come soon, because if it doesn't, we all know it will not meet its intended purpose. The whole idea is to keep everybody afloat, and if they sink before the money gets there, then that's a serious crisis. So they're on it. They just assured us that within the last few hours, and hopefully it'll be coming soon. And then Roger, maybe you want to speak to, from the health aspect of this and what we think on the economy, how soon will we get back to what we used to call normal?
Yeah, that's of course a great question. I know the president's anxious. Again, the most important thing we can do is to contain the virus. The better we can contain it, the quicker we're going to come out of this. I think it takes a month to ramp up and a month to come down. So if you're going to throw out a peak, I don't know, for you guys, April 17th, Mike, is 18th? Does that sound about right, what you guys are thinking?
Well, we're in Louisiana. We're supposed to be on shutdown until the end of this month, but that's subject to revision if we get out of it sooner. So let's hope so.
Right, but if the peak of the virus is let's just say the middle of April.
Yeah, we may be there already. Yeah.
So I think it'll be the middle of May that some people are going to be going back to work. And the good news is there's quick testing available. So in 15 minutes, once every of these communities all have them, you can get a test and say you have the virus, and more importantly is the antibody test that said you had the virus. So if you have some employees that have already had the virus, then you can't spread it, obviously, and there's nothing to worry about. That person can get back to work. And I think there's different jobs. We're probably, you're not going to open up the Superdome down there, right? But if you have a job where you're with 3 or 5 employees, I think those people are going to be coming back sooner. So I'm hoping the middle of May that some people are going to be going back to work. But it's going to be June, to be honest, I think, before it's going to be closer to normal. And this is an art, not a science. That's kind of my feeling.
That's right. And while that's the expectation, we all continue to pray that we can defy that expectation. That miraculous things will happen, and we'll be able to get people back to work a lot sooner. We do have the other component of the CARES Act that I didn't address is the expanded unemployment insurance that's available for people who are really in a bind and who are not able to get back to work, and that lasts through July. But again, we hope we don't have to use that. We hope that we can get people back to work, because that's where we find our dignity, and that's part of the free market economy is one of the things that makes America the greatest nation in the world, and we've got to reopen. As the president rightfully said, I think a couple weeks ago at one of his pressers, he said, we're just not made for this. And what he meant by that is, the U.S. economy is not made for people to just sit around and stay home. We're a vibrant, free society, and that's where we find the source of our strength in so many ways. And so we've got to get it back open as soon as possible, and we'll be working every day in Congress to make that happen. Ruth, do we have time for maybe one more? Ruth, I don't know. You might have lost Ruth. I think we were supposed to go. Okay. Yeah.
We have Matt from Allen Parish that has a question about crawfish farmers. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Congressman, can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Matt.
Hey, man, how are y'all? Just thank y'all for everything y'all are doing. Also, thank you to Brad and Garrett, to your staffers. They've been very helpful in everything going on. We are getting word from the FSA office and USDA of possible stimulus for the farmers, and I was just trying to see an ETA on that. And if crawfish were going to be included, and rice and everything else that's going on here, we have several hundred H-2A immigrant workers down here, and we're just trying to make sure we're going to keep paying them,
Well, that's right. And one of the big questions we got initially, I know Roger can speak to this as well. He's got the biggest ag district in America, but one of the first questions was about H-2A and H-2B employees, if they were eligible to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program. And some of the initial guidelines from the SBA and the USDA were a little bit ambiguous on that. So they're working on some more specific guidance. And then I mentioned we had the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, on the phone just a few hours ago with us, and he specifically referenced the $9.5 billion in assistance that we put into the CARES Act for certain farmers, and he's trying to determine exactly how all that's distributed and all that. I think some of it's still in the works today, but there were several specific ag issues brought up about the seasonal nature of some of these crops, and I mean crawfish is one of those things. If you don't you got a certain very narrow window to harvest and process, and if you miss it, you miss it. So I think that the Secretary of Agriculture is got a very keen awareness of that. He meets regularly with the Louisiana delegation, and I think he's on it. Roger, you want to add any insight to that?
From our phone call today, the Secretary implied that he hopefully would have some guidance out next week. Not distributing money, but I think, as like farmers, we just want some certainty in life, right? So hopefully we'll know next week what that looks like, and then I bet it's another 3 or 4 weeks before people see any money. But we're looking forward to those rules coming out as well. Like you said, $9 billion towards cattle and specialty crops. So, and then there's another $14 billion for the more traditional commodities, the corn and all those types of things. So we're looking forward to those rules coming out next week.
And we'll be advocating for crawfish, as you know. So we'll see where it comes. So there's more answers to come on that, I guess. Let's keep our fingers crossed and stay in prayer. Ruth, we have time for another one?
Yeah, we got time for another one. We've got Billy from Shreveport. Go ahead, Billy.
Oh, I didn't know it was going to be on. I just wanted to ask Mike Johnson, does he know how much we appreciate him and the way he represents us here in Louisiana? I just wanted to ask him that question if he knows.
No, you're too kind. Thank you. I think Roger would tell you the same thing. When we signed up to run for Congress in 2016, nobody could ever have anticipated what it would mean in the years ahead of us, and none of this could have been foreseen. None of it surprises the Lord himself, but it surprises all of us. But, by God's grace, we've been sustained in this thing, and I feel like I'm called to this job right now, and I really appreciate that encouragement, Miss Billy. It means a lot to us, and Kelly and our children, and I know Roger gets the same kind of support in Kansas, and he's one of the most popular guys in that state because he does such a good job. And all we focus on every day is trying to serve our constituents because that's what we're here for. So I really appreciate that, Miss Billy. Thank you for the encouragement. You got another one, Ruth, or are we going to run out of time here?
I think we're going to run out of time. If you want to go ahead and make your closing remarks.
Well, listen, I want to just thank everybody again for your time. I know in a town hall setting, you never have enough time to answer all the questions, but I want you to know that we're available to you 24/7, and don't hesitate to call us. And let me give you the contact information again, and then I want to let Roger say a closing comment here. But our office number, the best way to reach us in the district is 318-840-0309, 840-0309. Or you can get all sorts of resources that will be helpful to you on our website. It's mikejohnson.house.gov. And I tell you, I know I'm biased, but I think I've got the greatest staff in the United States Congress, and they all have deep roots in the district, and about half of them work in Washington, and about half of them work here in our 3 offices throughout our 15 parish district in the 4th Congressional here in Louisiana. And they are just working tirelessly to try to resolve all these issues for individual constituents. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can help you on anything, coronavirus related or otherwise, anytime. Roger Marshall, Dr. Marshall, thanks again for being on the phone. And you want to say a closing comment here?
Thanks, Mike. Mike, I grew up on a family farm, and my grandma used to say, if you have your health, you have everything. These are going to be some tough economic times ahead of us, but our priority has always been protecting the health and safety of Kansans, of Louisianans. That's our number one priority. We're going to come out on the other side of this economically. And you can choose to live in fear, or you can choose to live in faith and hope. And I know the Johnsons, I know the Marshalls, we're going to be living in faith and hope, and just look forward to celebrating the resurrection of our Savior this weekend. We're going to be having a drive up, like a drive-in, old-fashioned drive-in movie service. We're not going to be able to worship together in the same room, but wherever 2 or more of us are gathered, God's with us. And I just am grateful for our friendship, Mike, and the leadership that you've shown, and just the faith that you live every day. So thank you so much. I'm honored to be on with you, and just wish the very best for all of your constituents and the folks on the call, and for their families, and the safety of all Louisianans. God bless all of you.
Well, thank you, my brother, and we'll tell everybody thanks again for your time this afternoon, and I'll leave you with this word as we go into Easter. We wish you all a blessed Easter, the Marshalls and everybody on the call, all our constituents. I'm reminded of one of my favorite sermons of all time. It was delivered by a pastor out in California many years ago, and it's entitled "It's Friday, but Sunday's a Comin'." And he talked about leading up into Easter and what happened at the cross on that Friday. Now it's Good Friday to us. That it seemed that darkness and evil had prevailed, and then the resurrection came. And so he said, while it looks dark and difficult on Friday, you remember Sunday's coming. So that's our reminder this afternoon. Sunday's are coming, and that's the hope that we have. So well said, Roger. Thanks again for your time, brother. I owe you. And thanks to all of you for your time this afternoon. We'll sign off. God bless.